OPM Task Force meeting on November 16, 2002. Time is 10 a.m.
Is there something right there?
It's being videoed.
Huh?
It's being videoed, and it will be published on the web.
Okay.
So there'll be an online copy. If you go to this website here, itsourturn.com, you'll find these videos online.
Oh, okay. So this is for Phyllis's group.
Yes.
Right. Has this got a recorder in it?
Yes.
So everything I said may go on there?
Yes.
Hi, Mom.
I was hoping I was going to when I caught that one. Yeah, no problem. There's no doubt about that.
We have one more member coming in. He'll be here in just a minute, so that's why we're waiting. We just realized that's confidential. Well, your stuff's here. You got something here. we're gonna do it without microphones in because they don't seem to be working. They were working earlier today, and for some reason they are not working now. I guess a couple of things so everybody knows. Bathrooms. I guess you go around either way around here, not on the back side in case anybody needs a restroom. I guess we didn't have to sign in here for the fire thing, but if we do have a fire, make sure everybody leaves in an orderly fashion. Please don't tremble your neighbor. It'd be helpful if there is. And with that, I guess we'll start, and we'll start out with the roll call, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Jack Peterson. I'm the Associate Director of the Environmental Services Division of the Arizona Department of Agriculture, and I'm also the Acting Director of the Office of Pest Management. And then we'll go through roll call for the task force members which were appointed by the Director. John Bolts, he indicated that he would not be able to make it. He has a conflicting meeting going on in Yuma, so he did not make it today. Dave Burns? Here. Lynn Evans? Here. Jimmy Fox? Here. Ken Frederick? Here. Bill Hemminghouse? Here. Will Rousseau? Here. Kirk Schmidt? Here. All right. That's a good deal. We've got folks here. I want to start off the meeting with a little bit, just a reminder, if folks haven't signed up for the listserv, go on our website and make sure that you do sign up. Hopefully everybody got notice of the meetings. And, remember, there's two of them. There's one for the Pest Management Advisory Council, and there's one for the task force. So you need to sign up for both of them. And did anybody feel that they signed up and they didn't get notice? Okay, good deal. Appears to be working. I got changes, update, other items out of the ordinary. We had, Kirk, I think you had asked for something dealing with the enforcement matrix, kind of a review of that, and unfortunately I didn't get it on the agenda. It's going to be a fairly lengthy discussion anyway, I think, just to go through the explanation of that, so we will put that on the next meeting. I think I looked at it, we have quite a bit of stuff that we're going to talk about today, and I'm trying to be respectful of everybody's time in regard to how long this meeting takes as well. I forwarded to you all this morning an email from Jason Fletcher. He's a structural pest management professional, and he sent in an email just giving his point of view on some things, so I forwarded that on to you. Just so you know, I've gotten a call from the legislature, and they're going to send somebody to the meeting. I don't know if somebody's here from the legislature, one of the staff research people or whatever, so that's good. They're taking an interest in this as well, and we've sent them a copy of the minutes. Next, I want to introduce just a couple folks that are here, just so people understand. This is Casey Collins. He's the department attorney and the Office of Pest Management attorney. So he will be he's legal counsel if we end up having to go to him. And then I'm just going to have Vince and Robert are up front here, and Vince is the compliance guy, and Robert is the licensing guy. And I just wanted everybody to make sure they know them, because they'll speak periodically in the meeting as well. So actually, next on the agenda, we just have the reminders about the licensing. Just if you would please stand up. No problem. Actually, go to the microphone. That's what we're going to ask folks to come to the microphone if you're going to speak, and we want you to introduce yourself, because Yolanda just came to the agency like last week or the week before, and so she doesn't know anybody, and so she needs help in remind when we speak who we are. So Yolanda, I'm Jack, so she can keep track of who's saying stuff.
Mr. Chairman, task force members of the audience, actually, this is Yolanda Salas. She actually joined the agency. She will be taking over the businesses and qualifying party applications for the Office of Pest Management. In addition to that, we are in the middle of our renewal season for businesses and qualifying parties. Please. Online renewal actually opened up on November 1st. It will close on January 30th. The fees remain unchanged from last year, and renewal notices actually were mailed to every qualifying party at their last adjusted record, and every business at that business's last adjusted record are basically what we had on file. If you haven't received it by this date, I strongly recommend you contact the office and we'll see if it's either been returned to us or lost in the mail. Currently, we have had 262 QP licenses that have been renewed online, 61 have renewed on paper. We've had another 203 businesses renew online, and 51 renew on paper. This is actually as of Tuesday morning. So, does anyone have any questions?
What percentage is that from?
It's less than 10% of the
Yeah, it's way down. It's very low. Kirk,
Question for you and Jack, I guess. There seems to be a lot of confusion out there in the industry right now with all of our discussion regarding the issue of a QP license. Can you explain that it's business as usual until the state legislature makes some sort of decision?
That actually is correct. Nothing has changed with regard to QP or businesses, and that probably won't change this legislative session. So right now it's business as usual until you hear otherwise from a posting from the agencies.
Vince Craig, OPM. As a reminder, if all you folks could state your name first. State your name first and get up. Oh.
So when you speak, you gotta come up here.
Oh. Talk to you. Does this work?
Yes.
I heard something of that.
Okay. Just as a reminder, if you folks, Vince Craig, OPM. You folks could just, before you speak, just state your name so that we can have an accurate record for the minutes. Appreciate it.
All right. With that, I hopefully, as you all see the agenda, one of the things that I'm wanting to do is if we make a decision on something, I'm wanting to record that in the next minute so it kind of puts it out there so everybody kind of can remember what we've said. And the one thing that we talked about and all agreed on at the last meeting was this no inactive licenses. That was the thing where people could, they didn't have to take any continuing education credits or anything like that, but they could maintain the license and then they could come back in and pay. And we all agreed that we didn't want to have the inactive licenses. So that's one of the things that I'm going to do is put these on the agenda so everybody can see that. So you're all kept informed as to what is going on. And we have somebody who wants to speak. If you'll.
I just want to ask where the minutes are located.
The meetings?
Yeah.
Do you have access to the internet?
Yep.
Okay.
We couldn't find it. I searched. Looked all through the website.
Did you go to, you went to the Department of Agriculture website? And on the front page, there's a link that says OPM Task Force.
No?
You click on that, and then what it will do is it will say meetings.
No?
And you click on that, and it brings you to a calendar. And if you click on the month that we're in, you go to whatever meeting it is right there.
So if I wanted last month, I would go back to last month's meeting and click on that?
And that will tell you where the meeting was and all that, yes.
Would it show the minutes?
Oh, the minutes?
No.
Yeah.
I don't know that the minutes have been posted yet.
Okay.
Okay? Is that what you're after, is minutes?
That's what I was
Okay.
asking about.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you said the meeting. I'm sorry.
No.
The videotapes of previous ones are available on the web.
All right. I guess that's the only thing we made a decision on. So I guess we're going to continue on and.
Let's hope that list is a lot longer at the next meeting.
The first one that we had was a continuing education revenue, and that was one that was requested by Dr. Pfeiffer. He was one of the gentlemen in the audience who provides continuing education credits, and I don't see that he's here. But one of the things that he asked is that we provide, just to give you guys an idea of how much revenue has been brought in through the continuing education stuff. And this just gives you a review for the last 4 years of the continuing education revenue. And you'll notice that you got the memo from Vince sitting at your spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's, actually, it's fiscal year, it says fiscal year 9 to 11. And we've got, so far, we brought in about $1,900 this year. There are still courses that we said up front were going to be held, and that could hold 240 people if everyone were there. And that actually brings in about 11,520 if everyone were there. So the revenue this year will, in all likelihood, be down from fiscal year 2011. And again, I think what we talked about was that we will continue to give continuing education on laws and rules and stuff like that. It's stuff to help keep people in compliance. And I think that was Mr. Piper's concern, is that we were competing with him unfairly and giving other type of training. So, any questions on this? Vince, did you want to go to the podium and speak?
Yes, Ms. Craig. I believe that discussion should be held into the PMAC meeting because Dr. Piper, I believe, didn't mention.
He actually asked it at this meeting.
Task Force.
He did ask it at this meeting. That's why but I'm going to bring this forward just so they know at the PMAC meeting. Thank you. Okay. Go ahead.
Jack Will Russo, I just want to make it clear that so we are clear in my mind, so that decision has been made. The department is going to continue to offer continuing education to fulfill the requirement for relicensing for the pest control operators.
I guess that's I guess we put it off to you folks, but that was my understanding. I want to make sure that everyone said, as long as we're doing this, we're not in the competing mode, but we're offering the laws and the rules and making sure people are compliant and touching on things, I guess, that I say in the Department of Agriculture. We go out and we talk about things that people aren't doing. Trying to make sure that people understand this is how you stay in compliance and dealing with some of these issues. Now, we're not going to go out there and necessarily do a whole class on pre-treats.
I see. Okay. Yeah. But I guess what I'm driving at is I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So this can be added to the list of things that we have made a decision about, is that the department will continue to offer these classes. So if you want to renew your license, you can get that continuing education at a department-sponsored event or down to the department. Okay.
Is that, I guess I would like a motion to that, actually, just to...
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a second from Lynn Evans. Do we have any further discussion?
Yeah, I think Phil Hemming, I'll say, this is just a part of them qualifying for
right.
You're not going to get just a,
correct.
We're not going to change anything, so this is just a
not yet.
additional service that provided to them to get their hours.
But my thought is it's analogous to the way we do it on the ag side. So unless I hear a reason to not do it like we're doing on the ag side, then I'd like to continue doing it like that.
And I guess I look at
You guys be fine.
Okay.
No, I have no issue.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Carries unanimously. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Next, I guess the first part of probably our exciting discussion is the qualifying party, and Kirk brought that up this morning that there's some confusion, and I appreciate you doing that because we want to make sure nothing's changed. This task force is to move forward and to recommend change to the legislature, and they actually have to affect the changes that are going to occur. So I just want to make sure everybody knows, just continue operating as you have. Renew as you have. Pay your fees as you have. Okay. We've had some. We talked about this a little bit at the other at some previous meetings, but I wanted us to really get into some of this, and I just put down a bunch of questions. What should the requirements be? Should the requirements be the same for all categories? And I've got this weed and I've got general. Can we test for that? And are there exceptions? Should there be changes in general discussion on the QPs in the future? And the reason I said I have the, and I want to point out one of the things that may not seem clear is can we test for that? And I want everybody to understand that I think industry and the Office of Pest Management have had two differing views on the qualifying party. Okay? In a way. Industry has looked at it as we're showing that a qualifying party is someone who's qualified to run the business. And maybe that's just through some level of experience. But really what we're doing still is we're checking to make sure that that person, we're not testing for anything other than that those people know how to use pesticides. And so there's a difference there. And so that's why I say, can we test for that? And I think about, I'll use plumber as an example. You can become a journeyman plumber, and then you can become a master plumber. And that's done through an association. It's not done through the state, through a governmental entity. And so I guess, and I'm not trying to say we shouldn't have a qualifying party, don't get me wrong, but I just want to make sure that everybody is operating on the same page when we're talking about a qualifying party. I don't know that we can test for what industry is hoping that we can test for. What we can do, we're limited from a certain standpoint, is we can show that, yes, somebody's been licensed for a period of time. I'm going to draw this line in the sand. 3,000 hours is ridiculous. There's no way we can verify this. We're going to have to do it on something that we can verify. And the only thing we can basically verify is licensure. Somebody's been licensed. So with that, is that throwing a grenade and asking?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
I guess I don't understand. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Why do you think you can't test for it?
And what do you mean by test?
Well, okay, I'll answer both questions. Currently, there's just a test like the certified applicator exam that's qualifying party exam. And I guess if the folks within the industry were to develop, a bank of questions that, in my mind, I'm thinking you need to know about finances, you need to know about the taxes, you need to know about, it's all these kinds of things that folks need to know about. And then a governmental entity could do that. But then I look back at that and say, we are a pesticide regulatory body, consumer protection, and I'm just not sure that fits right. And that's my opinion. So that's kind of where it's going. So Dave, go ahead again.
Dave Burns, I just want to maybe expand on where you're headed. I think if you look at some of the general contracting exams and things like that, they absolutely do test for the ability to read financial statements, profit and loss, general business practices. They do test for that. So there are things out there that test for that. I agree 100%. 100%. The 3,000 hours is a ridiculous thing. Okay? That's my opinion. And it's not from the experience level. It's from the fact that it's almost impossible to verify. Impossible. Impossible for you as a state agency, impossible for us as business owners, impossible for applicants as applying for it. It's just a monotonous thing that is bad all the way around. But I do believe that if enough thought was put forward, a testing procedure could be put in place to test those basic knowledges of operating or managing a structural pest control business. If you have that in place, maybe the verification of experience wouldn't be quite as extreme, if at all. I know in a general contracting, there's a lot of people that ultimately end up going to school. General contracting schools, there's actual schools that have been developed so that they will help you pass a general contracting license exam. They're not easy. They are not. But, you know, the material's there to study. It maybe isn't always necessary to have, definitely not necessary to have a 3,000 hour marker.
So I guess, and I just want, Lynn made a comment of this. He said that ASU actually has a school contracting degree.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm almost hearing you saying is that maybe what it is the exam is set up, and as long as people pass the exam, they could be a qualifying party.
Jeff, Lynn Evans, what if, in addition to what Dave is suggesting, and the gentleman in the previous meeting alluded to it, I don't know if he specifically said it, what about a panel of experts like these gentlemen in front of us here to certify that the guy, having passed all these tests, and I don't know the practical aspect of this, but what if they prove themselves in the field as being adequate to represent the industry?
That's like a practical exam.
Yeah, like a driver's license, a driving test. I don't know if that's workable or not, but that'd be something.
Go ahead, Bill.
Bill Russo, just a point of clarification for me, the qualifying party is not the same thing as someone that's actually doing the applications. Is that correct? The qualifying party is essentially and it's not necessarily the business owner, but it's the person that is qualified, I guess, in that particular area, i.e. fumigation, or is that, am I understanding it right? Or
they could, in smaller firms, whatever, they could be actually out doing the treatments as well. But
Okay.
in larger firms, my guess is.
But you know, so do you have to be a QP to make an application in the state of Arizona?
Not to it.
So the QP is really more someone that runs and owns the business, runs or owns the business. It would not preclude you from making an application if you didn't have a QP.
In order to have a business license, you have to have a qualifying party.
Okay.
And so.
For your business, whether it's 100 people or one person.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Jack, just for the ag side of the table,
Right.
let me see if I can maybe make sure everybody is
Yeah.
clear on this. The qualifying party, that license is the person that is responsible
Okay.
for running of the business. Everything that happens in that business leans on the shoulders of the qualifying party. If an applicator, who also has a license, makes a mistake, the qualifying party is on the hook for that, so to speak. There's varying degrees, but ultimately, the qualifying party is the person on the hook. Not the business, not necessarily the business or the business owner, because they could be corporations that don't have a face or a body. They have a charter, and that's all they have. That qualifying party, the person that holds that specific license, has business operations and responsibilities on his or her shoulders.
Okay.
An applicator license is really designed for somebody that is supposed to apply pesticides in a structural environment. It's to ensure that they know what they're doing.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Bill?
Phil Hemminghouse. The question, taking different industries into it, like golf. You got a superintendent that's usually probably the qualifying party. He doesn't have the other aspects of the financial responsibilities of the golf course. That falls back to probably the owner of the course, the agency that owns it, who is holder of the business license. So I think there's a lot of confusion on their end where they shouldn't be, why are they held financially responsible for being a QP? They're basically making sure that what's sprayed is sprayed right by the laws and all the aspects. So I think there's some differences on the different pest versus termite versus golf versus landscape, and that's where I think there's some confusion on their end.
Go ahead.
Go ahead if you want to.
Well,
I was just going to field that part.
Well, I was just, the only thing I was going to throw out there, again, one of the things, as we continue to discuss this, is potential changes to it. And one of them, we thought, I mean, it's kind of, we've had a soundbite on it, perhaps there are some areas that shouldn't be under this scope. And golf courses was one of those, and right away, so.
Yeah, and I think historically, that is one of the problems, is you have other industries that are quote by law regulated under structural, but technically they really don't fit the model.
Right.
And landscapers can be considered one of those. If you're doing freeway right of way, what part of structural does that fit into? It really doesn't. So unfortunately, they've been forced into the box, and the box doesn't fit them. And I would agree wholeheartedly. Golf course people, same way. They are much closer to what you do in agriculture on property in which you own. And you're doing a specific application of pesticides, not as the business, but as a portion of what you do as a whole.
Yeah, it's a small
It's
portion
just,
of their
it's just a
daily,
piece of what
yeah.
you have to do in order to keep your crop, your grass, your weeds, whatever, alive or dead.
Because they could literally, golf course might spray once a month. That's it.
Exactly.
And they're re-regulated every day.
Correct.
And I'm gonna point out something here just so people understand. I'm going to go to the committee members before I go to you guys. So if the committee members have something to say, you're gonna cool your heels until we get there. So, Kirk, you had your...
Well, just one other comment, Kirk Smith. Don't forget too that we have thousands of licensed applicators that work for government, and we have no qualifying party and or business license on top of that. So this whole thing really needs to be resolved, and consider too the joint responsibility that we have as well. Because if we're going to start monkeying around with the qualifying party and change it to a responsible party, we're going to have to change the joint responsibility issue on top of that.
I don't know, we've reached agreement on that.
I'm just saying, we got a lot of stuff to cover here. So.
I agree.
Two thoughts, question. Something comment you made, Dave, about a qualifying party being responsible for the daily business of spraying pesticide. Is that really the job of a qualifying party, or are they responsible for overseeing the certified applicators? Does a qualifying party actually mean they run the business, or that they're just responsible for the certified applicators?
Dave Burns. I think that the law is pretty specific in that they are responsible for those actions that take place that are governed in structural pests. So probably in general, yes, it would be what the applicators would do. But there are other things involved in the business that they are responsible for or would have responsibility for, such as record keeping, notifications. Some of those general business things that maybe aren't necessarily the responsibility or the action of a licensed applicator, they're more the responsibilities of the business operations.
But just to clarify, they're not really responsible for the profitability or the running of the business. They're really responsible for pesticide applications, the record keeping thereof, anything to do with the way those applications are made and the people that are making them, and the training and supervising of those people.
I think by law, that's what they're responsible for. In the real world, that qualifying party could be in a small business, the business owner.
Sure.
And yes, he would be in a large company, such as Western Exterminator. Their qualifying party may not have anything to do with the financial side of the business. He would be responsible for those things that are governed by law of structural pests.
Right. But just trying to understand really what the true role is.
Robert, you're about ready to pop, so.
Actually, I was going to clarify from the agency standpoint. Qualifying party is required to, if their job is to maintain or regulate the pest management operations of the business. As far as we're concerned, QP doesn't have to do anything with finance. That's not, as far as our role, we don't get into that. Right. They're not responsible for insurance. Actually, they're not responsible for record keeping. Record keeping, insurance, those things are the extra responsibility of the business licensee. Now, if you're the QP and the business licensee, obviously you're going to be one and the same. But qualifying party is responsible for all pest control related activities in the business, the applicators, pesticide applications, whereas the business licensee is responsible for record keeping, insurance, we would, I would assume financials of the business, but not necessarily the responsibility of the qualifying party as far as the agency sees it. So when, just to kind of clarify, that's how we see it versus how, possibility the industry or the other, and that's actually also the way it's described in our statute rules. I know.
So, Robert,
Yes.
question. Inspector goes to a business, says, I want to see your records for applications. The guy that he's talking to is the QP for that thing. He'll go, it goes to the responsible party of that company?
Well,
The license holder, business license holder?
It's whoever is whoever has the authority. Typically that authority is now placed back on the qualifying party.
Yeah,
by agreement
as a
between
business owner, you would
yeah,
give it to your
exactly.
party.
That's between the two. Now, granted, if there are issues with the records, there's not records there.
Right.
The issue doesn't go against the qualifying party. The issue goes against the business licensee.
Will Rousseau, is there a large gap in your experience between the actual applicators and a gap in experience, abilities, etc., between the QP and the fellows doing the actual application?
That's actually, it's a case-by-case basis. It depends on the individual. I have seen people in this industry who've been 20 years and can't seem to get past the qualifying party exam. I've seen guys who've been in the industry for 2 years and blow through it like it was nothing.
Okay.
So as far as experience-wise, I'll say I've been arguing that the 3,000 hours or the huge thing is.
That's good. It'd be good to have somebody,
Yeah, I think, Will, he's right, it is a case-by-case
Sure,
basis.
of course.
But that applicator license, that exam, is designed to take someone with virtually zero experience and be able to make them a safe applicator and understand what that label is. That's what that license really is for. So you could take somebody with zero experience, give them basic knowledge and information, and teach them basic applications of pesticides, and they can go past that exam. It's a very basic exam. It is not designed to test someone's knowledge of advanced pesticide application or advanced business in any form or fashion.
Well, and obviously where my comments are going is do you need a QP system between the public and the people actually making the applications? Again, in agriculture, which granted is a different industry, we don't have that. I can tell you my own personal opinion is I don't know why the Department of Ag would have anything to do, or whoever is overseeing OPM, would have anything to do with the financial viability of someone's business. That's not our business. The Department of Ag isn't checking my business's viability or any other, licensee, their financial ability. So I don't know why that should even be on the table. But the experience and the ability to make a safe, proper application is very important. And so I'm sorry.
I would disagree with you that it's not their place to be involved in the financials of our business.
Right.
I think where that was headed was, could you test someone's knowledge of business operations to say, yes, you are responsible enough to operate a business in the structural pest control industry.
And I get that. I'm just not sure that's a role that the regulatory agency rather should be involved in. That's up to the private sector.
And again, I would argue that it just becomes, can you test for it?
Sure.
Yes.
Right.
So I think that if we looked at the extremes of testing, could we test and develop a test for whatever we determine to be the necessary experience factors of becoming a qualifying party? Yes, I believe that test could be developed. Whether that, regardless of what you choose, whether that's financial, in the construction industry, you're going to know basic financial statements because they want to know, can you run a business as well as can you, apply a pesticide or hammer a nail.
Good.
Okay, Phyllis, you've been waiting patiently.
Chair, Task Force. My name is Phyllis M. Faranga. I'm president of It's Our Turn. I concur with Will's comments on the QP. But this goes back to training. Again, Farmingdale University, those students were trained to basically take over a corporation, run a corporation, or to run their own businesses. So we had a little bit different training. It was called Economic Entomology, a 2-week course. At the end of the course, we had to present a business model and a marketing model directly associated with the pest control industry. We also had to present at the end of that 2-week course a label, that we comprehend this label and we can put one together.
So that was the practical side of things?
Practical.
You said it was economic entomology?
Economic entomology was the course, Dr. Frischman. And it was, we had to go in, study other businesses. Again, the cooperation of the other businesses. We had to study, sit in their offices, look at their bookkeepers, their marketing plans, put our own marketing plan together. But again, we were a type of student that a corporation would hire, or we were a student that were going to start our own businesses. So we were at a different level and had to present a business plan at the end.
Thank you.
Charles Wilcott, licensed applicator. As far as, I think the first question we should ask is the QP even needed? And we're going back on construction. There are licensed contractors and there are handymen. The threshold between them is a dollar amount of what they're doing. I guess the way that protects the public is it doesn't. If you're spending $100,000 to build a house, you want someone with a license and stuff. If you're spending less than $600 to work on a staircase, you can be a handyman, don't have to be licensed by the state. I think maybe some kind of threshold could be made with pesticide application. When you're applying termiticides to your house, you're putting hundreds of gallons of pesticide into the ground. Maybe that should be the threshold, how much pesticide you're actually applying. In agriculture, applying hundreds of pounds or hundreds of gallons, maybe on right-of-ways and weed control, or golf courses, you're again applying hundreds of gallons. Typical residential treatment, you're putting maybe a couple gallons down. Pesticides, again, it has. I think it goes back to the restricted use pesticides. Most pesticides that a consumer or that a professional operator is using is available to the public. Again, so maybe that's something that needs to be taken into account. What you're using, how much you're using, how much of a financial liability you're putting into the application you're making.
Do you know how they get that number? I guess that's as I said, or that's a critical thing. Unless somebody's going to provide us with their tax forms, and I'm sure you all want to do that. Provide us with your tax forms to show us your revenue. That dollar amount. I had thought about that before, but there's no way we can deal with that.
I think that's more of a compliance thing. Basically, compliance is complaint driven. I'm guessing, except in the termite field.
Well, I think there are other areas you need to look at too. In my mind, at least, fumigation.
Well,
aquatics is one that I think is fairly critical as well. Those are three that off the top of my head. There was another one? Did we talk?
And I guess.
What's that? There are certain areas I don't think it's just limited to.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm saying. There are certain areas where a QP that level of regulation on an operator may not be needed.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Kevin Etheridge, home contractors, termite and pest control, chairperson, and task force committee members. To speak to the last speaker, I believe that the handyman exemption is $750 annually. It is not per property. Is that correct?
I believe it's per job.
I disagree, and I would like to be noted
Okay, yeah.
as such.
Do you know how do they get that? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
That just seems unobtainable to me.
Take the word of it.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Ken.
No, that's fine. I'm a little cranked up, so this will help me relax.
Okay.
I'm going to speak specifically to the agenda item, which states what should the requirements be for a qualifying party, and should the requirements be the same for all categories. And I believe that a QP is to be held to a higher standard of responsibility. They should oversee the day-to-day operations of the business. They should be responsible for training and equipping the employees of that business. They should be responsible for writing company protocol. They should be responsible for ongoing and continuing education for the applicators that have to obtain that education and either meet or exceed state requirements. Financial responsibility. In statute as currently written, the financial responsibility is on the business license. I think you should move that financial responsibility to the QP. And the reason, and to address that, is because you are a consumer protection agency, whether you like it or not. And to have licensed activity go on a property without having the proper financial stability to protect the consumer, I think would be a disservice to the consumers of the state. The QP testing should include the basic knowledge of business and the financial requirements. Somebody spoke about the contractor's licensure, and you have to know lien laws. Because when we go out and we do a termite job on a property, we can technically lien that property, or at least reserve our lien rights through a notice so that we're assured that we can get paid for doing that work. Should be responsible, the QP should be responsible for all the documentation within the organization. And this is important. I do not think that the QP should have to hold an applicator's license, because in addition to being responsible for the business aspect, they also have to have knowledge of the application of pesticides, fumigation, or whatever category they're a QP for. So you eliminate the applicator for the QP. Now, I'm licensed in California. You guys all know that. I've said it before in this meeting. I'm a licensed operator, which is California's QP. I do not have to hold a field representative's license. I can come out to your home and do a pest control application under my operator's license. I have field representatives that work for me. And then to throw a real stick in the mud, we're talking about 3,000 hours, 4,000 hours, what's right, what's wrong, how do you verify it? I think you have to have some standard of practical knowledge, and you can demonstrate that on a test, but I still think you should ask on an application for 3,000 hours. And you can say that it's not verifiable, and you can say that people can make it up, but you know what? You can always do audits to the best of your ability. And, you can ask people in the room who supports my position if you want to see a show of hands if everybody disagrees with me or agrees with me. Thank you.
Kevin?
Yes.
Linda. I'm interested in your overall theme that it kind of like the QP needs to be in your model, kind of needs to be the owner of the business. If I own a pesticide business and under your criteria, what am I going to do? Sit in the office? I mean, you want all of the day-to-day operational things, financial, the whole deal. I mean, is that what you want the law to reflect?
I believe that the QP should be responsible for the operations of the business. And if you own the corporation and you hire me as a QP, I need to be present in that business, at least to the tune that I understand that you as the business owner, the majority stock shareholder, are taking care of all of that sort of behind the scenes stuff, to include insurance and workman's comp, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I believe the QP should be held to that standard.
Jimmy Klotz, just a comment. One of the things that's circulated for years is under that model, then why have a difference between a business license and a QP, and why not just roll them together? That's basically what you're saying is
What you're describing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just pointing out that that's what would fit under your model.
If you don't mind me jumping in.
I'm Dave first, just because I'm going to recognize the committee members first.
Well, and I think I can address that. The purpose of the business license and the QP separation in the state of Arizona really had to do with corporations, because you really didn't have a body with the corporation who technically held the business license. There wasn't an individual. So there were no teeth in the law to go after anybody. You could stop a corporation, but you couldn't stop the owner of that corporation from starting a new corporation tomorrow. I think if you look at a lot of other state models and licensing, a lot of them don't have a separation between business license and qualifying party license. A lot of them are the same. And I don't know that one is better or worse than the other. I think they both have some validity. But I think that if you wanted the model of combining the two, you could very well do that. You have to have a law that has teeth of going after an individual, not a corporation, because again, you can take the license away from a corporation and they could be in business tomorrow under an incorporation. You haven't stopped the bad guy should that become a necessity. We saw that several years ago in the termite pre-treat industry. We had a lot of bad guys, and there was no way to go after the bad guy because they were all held up in corporations. And you take a business license away, they just start a new business the next day, a new corporation. The qualifying party didn't have responsibility for that, so they were kind of, well, I'll just move on. And the state ended up chasing people, and they never really had the ability to go get a bad guy and stop them from doing business. The qualifying party does that. And when you make a qualifying party responsible for the business operations, that puts something very specific on the hook when that business operates in a manner that's inconsistent with the law. The state has a way to go.
And Dave, I understand where you're going with the person that holds a qualifying party, but there's actually been a number of people found ways around that even, because people can now rent qualifying party licenses from other people. So you can be back in business the next day with a new business license and a new qualifying party person. So it really doesn't eliminate that. It may take care of that person who had bad practices. It doesn't stop the business owner from setting up shop the next day.
And I don't disagree with you. There's often, I've always said, to regulate the bad guy is almost impossible, because if he's a bad guy, he's going to figure out how to get around the regulation. The regulation becomes a hindrance on the guys that are doing business properly. So I think the real thing that you have to develop is somewhere in between that allows the state to come up with a reasonable way of regulating an industry, having some ability to go after the people that don't do things properly, and allows free enterprise to be in business and operate in a manner that they can make a profit. I think that's really what our task is, as difficult as that might be. And so, back to the point, could you combine the two licenses? Yeah, I think there's ways to make that work. I think that ultimately you end up with the same thing, though, is a person that's got responsibility, not a corporation.
Go ahead, please, finish.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to make the discussion I hear emerging, and you made the comment about it, we're a consumer, we're going to be, because right now we're not anything, going to be a consumer protection agency. And I would agree from the standpoint that we need to protect the consumer from that the materials used in their school or business or home are proper and they're legal and they're properly applied in the right rates. I don't agree, even after hearing that we need to be in the role of protecting the consumer from a fraudulent operator. That's not, in my mind, the role that this group should do. So, and you don't agree with that, that's cool. I'm throwing that out there because that's what I hear. I think that's where we're headed, is to make that decision about, you know, what the QP does, it's been a flashpoint for a lot of discussion and a lot of disagreement. And so I think we need to determine if we're going to keep it, and if we do keep it, what's the criteria to meet that test and qualify for that.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw this up too. I don't want us to make this black and white either from the standpoint of we keep it or we don't keep it, because perhaps there are areas, you know, where it's good to have somebody that's got, you know, something, you know,
Yeah,
I'm thinking of, you know, the guys using
No.
the fumigants or whatever, you know.
No, you're right, and that example has been used before,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
it's a good one. I think if you're going to be treating in schools, you know, but again, you know, we were talking earlier, it's not like agriculture isn't doing anything that's you know, there's some risk exposure. We're treating the food that we all eat, so it's not like we have a laissez-faire, you know, approach that guy can just go out and do whatever he wants to do. It's highly regulated. It should be.
One thing kind of to point out is a little bit, you know, agriculture kind of has something in a way similar, because we have the custom applicators. We require them to pass an exam, whereas Office of Pest Management has both the QP and the business license. The business license doesn't have to take an exam. We're kind of making it's like it could be looked at, like it's been stated, the QP and the business are all kind of in one.
Well, I think that's how it's been treated, and again, I'm not sure that's how it ought to continue.
Yeah.
But go ahead, sorry. Please. This is your... We're here to hear you.
Kevin Etheridge, again, for the record, contracted termite pest control, to speak to the original question that Mr. Burns answered. I personally don't see where you would have a downside to at least having a business license if you wanted to modify that to a registered office, so that if you had shareholders, you would at least know who they were. But the requirements of a business license or registered office would have to be to have a qualifying party license. And then the qualifying party license, the rest of the requirements that I listed earlier, would fall under the QP. And granted, the owners of the business would probably be supplying the insurance, the workman's comp. But at least there would be a standard of care for the qualifying party to ensure that that was being done. And then lastly, and I will close with, I think once you issue a qualifying party for an existing QP to broaden the license, I think the burden of broadening the license should be significantly changed. Because if you have an individual that has demonstrated that they can read labels, make safe applications, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to broaden into another category with a less restrictive requirement than the $3,000. Thank you for your time.
Chairman and Task Force, my name is Henry Schneider, International Accommodations. I would like to say that I believe the whole concept of QP should be eliminated, and that having a pure applicator's license with the responsibility of the applicator to apply chemicals properly, and business can take care of any insurance or paperwork that might be required. There's no need to have additional layer of bureaucracy built into the entire system. I have to disagree with the previous speaker about, well, why would QP even have to have an applicator? Well, I mean, if the guy's going to be responsible for the application of chemicals, you have to know a lot about the chemicals and to even recognize whether or not they're being applied correctly. So again, that argument is not logically consistent. And so, again, I think that just eliminating, much as the way agriculture currently does it, totally eliminating the concept of QP and just having an applicator is the appropriate way to go.
How do you deal with liability issues in that situation? I guess
like any other corporation, every corporation or sole proprietor or partnership, however you like to your business organization, has liability. It doesn't matter whether you're doing construction, whether you're applying pesticides, whether you're doing property management, whether you're fixing dishwashers. They all have liability, and there's standard liability insurance. And
but I guess I'm just trying to think of, I'm going to go out on a limb, you know, I'm going to go out and I'm thinking of the consumer protection side of this thing, as Kevin mentioned. You go in and you're an applicator, so you decide you're going to have a business, you're going to go out and start spraying things. So you go into a restaurant, you spray all on the counters and make a bunch of people sick. They serve food and make people sick. And so you have insurance to cover that? I guess.
I would hope so. But that's
and I guess I'm looking at it
different from the restaurant owner himself going out to Home Depot buying exactly the same chemicals and doing exactly the same thing. Technically, he owns the property. Let's pretend he's not renting for the moment, so he comes under the current exemptions.
Owner and occupied?
Owner occupied. He can go to Home Depot, buy exactly the same chemicals, spray the whole place, including the counters, if he so desires, and he's got exactly the same situation.
But again, I guess in that situation, people can go after that restaurant. And you know, the restaurant's got, you know, they've got a business front where there's going to be a certain amount of liability, I think. But you as an individual coming in with a spray tank and going in and spraying that, you could be here today, gone tomorrow. And I guess I'm trying to look at the consumer protection side of that thing, and how do we get something from you?
Well,
I want to make sure I got sick. You owe me now. So.
Sure. And the quick answer is you can't legislate morality. If the guy's a crook and he wants to be a crook, all of your rules won't stop him from being a crook. Okay? You know, it's the old thing of why do you put bars on your windows? To make the other guy's house look more attractive to the crook. Not to stop him from breaking into yours, but to make the other guy's house look more attractive. And the police department will tell you that any day of the week. You're not going to stop people who are dishonest and who are intent in being dishonest.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I wanted to kind of clarify. I think there's maybe some confusion with regards to how we handle our licensing. Qualifying party, in order to get a qualifying party currently, you have to have been a licensed applicator. You can't come and say, hey, I'm going to be a QP. You actually have to have an applicator license. So the concept of having to have a QP, or getting a QP and maintaining applicators, or maintaining an applicator license, it makes sense that once you get one, it supersedes the other. That makes perfect sense. It's not currently like that, but I think that's something that I think that's an easy change. As far as business goes, we have several levels of licensure. We have a sole proprietor. That's an individual. And if there's an issue if the business licensee is a sole proprietor, we're going after the individual if there's an issue. For a limited liability company, we have managers members. And if a business licensee gets cited, we're not going to go after the business entity. We're going to go after managers members because those are the people who are responsible for that business. Same thing with a corporation. Corporations, presidents, vice president, secretary, we go after the officers in the instance that the company says, well, hey, we're a corporation. Those are who, because there's got to be somebody.
Is there a difference in insurance requirements for any one of those?
No. Yes.
Is there, when you say go after, are you talking about go after for an incorrect application or from a financial standpoint?
Well, say in a complaint situation, it's, you know, if we have a situation with a complaint, we're going to go after the business licensee. We're going to be contacting who's responsible for that corporation. We'll say for financial, we're not going after anybody for financials.
Okay.
That would be a civil matter,
All right.
and we'll tell somebody, yeah, you're gonna have to deal with that in civil court.
So your
Do not that
whole
way.
deal is that somebody calls and complains and they say, hey, they came in, they sprayed this all over my couch, it didn't kill anything except my dog, and that's the type of complaint you're talking about.
Basically,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Robert?
Yes.
Under Kevin's scenario, would that mitigate the responsibility of the business owner, or would it go to, sorry, Kevin? I mean, he's asking for this umbrella of responsibility. Would it be the qualifying party under his scenario, or would you still go to the business licensee for the?
I would say, under the scenario that Mr. Etheridge provided, I would say that ultimately we'd be going after the qualifying party. And it would be the qualifying party's responsibility if he had a business licensee, he wasn't the owner, and he had a business licensee that wasn't providing that backing, didn't provide the insurance, then I would say at that point, that qualifying party might want to evaluate whether or not they want to stay at that company. Because obviously his license is what's going to be on the line at the end of the day.
Under just a strictly non-compliance issue, it would be the business licensee, it would be the qualifying party under that scenario.
I think under that scenario, everything within fall on the qualifying party.
Jack? I haven't said much here because, I'm a Ken Frederick. I just have 5 employees, so, I'm the qualifying party. I'm the business licensee, and I got to have everything. But all this discussion really proves to me that it's a mess. And it's real simple to me. If you're the business owner, you're the one that's on the hook. I don't care if you got a QP or you manager or whatever you got. It comes down to the business owner. That's the way I look at it. Whether you're a corporation, a sole proprietor, LLC. And, my job is to properly train and equip. We train and equip my guys all the time. We do that quite often in our house, in our office. But I know if my applicator goes out and does a rodenticide treatment, and the dog needs a rodenticide because my guy didn't properly do what he was trained to do, it's still going to fall on me.
Sure.
Even though the technician might get in trouble as well because of the joint responsibility laws in this state. But it still falls on me. So I've never really thought about it a lot because I'm just a small company and I got all 3. But this discussion has really brought it to my attention that somehow it needs to be fixed. How the answer, I don't know them all, but because I think about it from my tunnel vision of being a small LLC. Amen.
I just want to comment, and I think, I don't want us to continue to focus on, I think it's good to ask the questions about how this would work now, but I think we want to remember to focus forward as to, how we...
Our task is to determine
how we really want it to be.
But Jack, I think it's a good discussion from my standpoint of not being
in the business.
In that business, so it gives me a perspective that I can have.
Good. All right.
Dave Burns. Jack, I think that a point that Ken brought up is in the consumer protection end of what we do. I think it's understood or expected by ultimately every consumer that a licensed company, whether it's my company or Ken's company or the state of Arizona, if they are doing business with them, that the state has checked them out to make sure that, one, they know how to apply the pesticides, that they're financially responsible for whatever they're doing. Because if Ken's guy puts rodenticide in the wrong place or in the wrong usage and the dog eats it, the dog dies, the consumer expects the state to have said, hey, he's got the financial wherewithal to protect me and make my wrong a right. Whether you do anything about it or not really isn't the issue. It's that expectation is there by the consumer to say, you've licensed him, now he needs to make a wrong a right. And if Ken has $1,000 worth of general liability insurance, he's not going to be able to make that happen. Now you've got consumers out there that are are being misled by what is a licensed company. Does the licensed company, how you throw the QP into it really doesn't make a difference. They're doing business with Conquistador or Burns or the Maricopa County. If they make a mistake and they kill all the fish in the koi pond, they are expected under that to be taken financial responsibility of it. And if the state doesn't have those standards to the business license, we are letting down the consumers on the protection end of things.
Can I ask this a stupid question? I'm not in the business, and so I don't. But is there a difference? All you guys that are in you're in the ag business too. I'm a two-man shop. Is the insurance I buy? It's got to be way less than the insurance you buy.
Probably not. Probably
I mean,
not.
if I have to buy $250,000 worth of liability insurance, and you have to buy $250,000 worth of liability insurance, mine's going to be cheaper than yours, isn't it?
Yeah, it's based on business volume.
Okay, it is based on business volume. So okay.
Yeah, they base it on how many dollars you turn.
Yeah.
What level of coverage you're looking for. I mean,
Yeah, well, the state sets the minimum always, and that's, I just wanted to make sure that, I was trying to decide if we were, really putting folks, I'm a sole proprietor at an economic disadvantage because I have to have the insurance, so, okay, thank you, appreciate that.
A minimum standard, if he does $100,000, he's going to pay a premium based on 100. And if you do 100 million, it's going to be based on 100 million.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Good.
Hi, I'm Kelly Jenny. I'm with Metro Institute. I just wanted to talk about maybe the difference between the QP and applicator in general.
Let's make sure everybody knows what you do. So, yeah.
With Metro Institute, we currently provide the testing services, test administration for OPM. I'm a QP as well. And there is a completely different skill set between an applicator and a QP. Most of us QPs were applicators, some still are applicators, but not every applicator aspires to be a QP. To be a QP requires abstract thinking. It's not just how do I apply pesticide, it's why am I doing it. All of us that have operated a pest control business can attest to this. When we get in a room, it's not the everyday, daily, mundane treatments that we're discussing. But when there's a problem that 5 other companies have attempted to solve Mrs. Smith's issue, we all get in the room and we talk to our most experienced tech and we say, what have you been doing there? And we analyze the situation and we make a call. It's kind of like a doctor-nurse scenario. They carry out the directives and the protocol of the company on a daily basis, and the QP makes the call and says, this is how we're going to approach this, this is what I want you to do. That's why they're responsible. They're making the decision. It's a little different than the owner of a farm or agriculture making that decision. Their QP, I would imagine, is generally the product rep who comes in and they consult with them. And
so it's pest control advisor.
It's these guys.
Okay, no, pest control advisors.
Never product rep.
At least they're educators. They get the information. Pest control advisors. It's a strategy to apply pesticides and to do management effectively. It's not just the guy out there applying it like he would every day. Situations change. They're not all not all applicators. Even this is the truth. They don't know why they're doing it. They're doing it because we told them this is the safe way to apply it. This is where we want you to apply it. They might not get the theory behind it. Now, part of that's because maybe they're not being properly educated. But the role of a QP is to be an educator, to be a leader, to be responsible. They are directing the proper application of pesticides.
Thank you.
Jim Kruger, Oregon Pest Control. Everything that Kevin mentioned, all the responsibilities, and somebody has to be responsible for more. Where I think it becomes a little impractical is where the QP is responsible for the day-to-day operations. And this will work if we're going to keep or a company, you know, a one-shop operation. But if you have multiple locations, there's no practical way that I could manage day-to-day operations in multiple locations, especially when it comes to if you want to bring financials into it. I have no financial responsibility of those locations, you know, for my company. I can oversee the general month training and topics covered and things like that. But when you're talking, when you bring day-to-day into it, and I'm solely responsible for something an applicator in Tucson might do. I mean, I don't see that as being real practical. So I think maybe another level. I know there's a branch manager required, but in that joint responsibility law, there's subordinate supervision, I guess. But you know, when you look at me to, you know, what happened on this treatment, you know, on River Road in Tucson, I mean, I have no idea. You know, and I wasn't there, can't be there.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you're the qualifying party for Oregon?
Yes.
How many, so you are the only qualifying party for Oregon?
Yes.
How many branch offices and how many employees do you guys have?
Probably between 80 and 120 employees anytime during the year, 6 branch offices.
Spread around the state?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jimmy Fox, so just to clarify, you're the qualifying party for all those branches and for all those employees. But the truth is, you can't see the daily operations of those individuals, applicators at those branch offices. But your qualifying party is responsible for those branch offices and all of those certified applicators.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's always been one of those bones of contention, actually, with this whole qualifying party thing. You're responsible, but are you truly effective? And, you know, if you're not truly effective, then do we need more teeth in the certified applicator license, more training? So anyway, I just bring that up because you bring up one of the weak points for that QP license and the way that it currently functions.
Jack, comment? Will Russo. And I don't mean this to be argumentative, but if you say that the QP needs to be responsible, but you're saying you can't be, then who is going to be?
Well, basically I am.
Well, I know, I understand, but it just goes to how useful is the QP designation now?
Well, I think for the overall, seeing how basically some of those responsibilities, like monthly training, what training are the applicators getting? You know, certainly there's
and that's where I see the role of the QP, is to make sure that the proper training is in place with the actual applicators. I mean, that's how our business works.
But day-to-day training, when we're hitting May and we're training new applicators, there's no way I can be in all those locations overseeing all of those, 20 applicators that we're bringing on for the season.
But you deal with each of the branches though, correct?
I deal with each of the branches, yeah.
Okay. So there's, you pass on, it's like, I'm trying to think of it, somebody told me this, you can pass on your authority but not your responsibility. You've given the authority, basically you're saying you make sure these people are trained and everything in each of the branches, but you're ultimately responsible.
Correct.
Since we're on this train of thought, maybe Robert or Vince, could you get up and explain what the rules currently state, what QPs have to do for branch offices and that sort of thing?
Chair, members of the task force audience, the branch office, in order to have a branch office location other than your main office, there needs to be a branch manager. That person's a licensed applicator, and that branch location can't do anything more than what that branch manager is licensed to do. If you have a qualifying party in, say, 4 categories, but you have an office somewhere we'll say in Tucson, and the person you have made the branch manager, the person responsible for that location, only has one of those licenses, that location can only do work in that one category. He has delegated that authority to that individual, and that individual is taking on that responsibility. It's not unlike, like a veteran, it's not unlike government. You have a head of an agency, you have directors, you have managers, you have supervisors. It's basically the same thing, at least we look at in defense management. You have your QP, you have your branch managers, you have your you have your applicators, and you may have a supervisor in between that. And that's basically how the structure works. Qualifying party is ultimately responsible, but he has delegated his authority to a branch manager in order to make sure that the business at that location runs properly. And everything should be going, hopefully everything goes back to the main office anyway for the qualifying party review.
But the QP is also responsible to visit that branch office every month, is that correct?
No,
That was changed recently?
it's never been that way.
I don't think it was ever in the law. It was just something that had been said that they were supposed to be there every month.
Robert, it isn't law. It has to be the primary office.
Yes, primary office, not branches.
Yeah.
Yeah, the QP must be at the primary office at least once every 30 days, but the branch offices, that's where the branch manager comes in.
Dave, did you want to say something? You had your hand
Yeah,
up or something.
I just, I don't, again, this box that we're trying to fit everything isn't necessarily square. You know, there's the branch situation is really only pertinent to really probably a handful of companies. The majority of the companies in this state by far are like Kent. They have 1 to 5 employees. They may work out of their house. They may work out of a small strip center office. The owner is usually the qualifying party. So I don't want to see us jump on making rules around large companies because that model is a little unique. And ultimately, I think Jim would probably concur that he may have 6 branches, but he's going to set the standard for what that branch is going to do, and he's going to delegate that responsibility in that branch for whatever training, protocols, record keeping, processing, whatever that is. Jim's responsible to set that standard for that branch. If the branch fails, it's his responsibility, not only to the state, but probably to Orkin. I'm sure that Atlanta, if Tucson makes a mistake, Atlanta's calling you saying you need to fix that. So he does have the ultimate responsibility as the qualifying party for Orkin, but he does delegate those responsibilities just like we would in our company. But again, that's where that qualifying party actually is important, because who does the state go after if you take that away? The applicator in Tucson? The branch manager in Tucson? No, they really need to come after the head guy of the business that's setting those standards. That says, this is how you're going to train, this is what you're going to do for records, you're going to provide this information to me, and I expect it every Monday morning.
Ken Frederick, thank you. A question real quick. And I'm going to ask Dave because he's a large company and such. Jim's the QP for Orkin, so he's ultimately responsible here, but why can't the owner be that? That's what I just asked. I mean, the owner's going to have somebody like Jim anyway to operate that business so it's profitable.
Orkin doesn't have an owner. They're a publicly traded company.
Well, that complicates things.
I'm pretty sure
That's a bigger box.
I'm pretty sure when you guys need to go after a corporation, you're not going after all the shareholders.
You just sell your stock.
So, Phil, you had your hand up?
Yeah, the question is, at a golf course that rents the QP, you never have to be there?
Once a month. Technically by the law, he has to show up once a month.
Robert?
That's us. Is it Robert or Vince?
Robert's the way the law is currently written, they have the qualifying party is going to be at the main office of the business once every 30 days. So if he's got 30 golf courses, technically he doesn't have to be there. However, and you got to look at the responsibility. If you don't go to any of those courses, and we do, and we find there's issues, and obviously you have never been there, the liability on you is more likely, we start looking at the other courses, you may not be a qualifying party for very long.
Just to give you an example, Kirk Smith, Maricopa County Inspector, a lot of golf courses in the county, sometimes are breeding mosquitoes. And when myself, one of our inspectors shows up on the golf course, it can be at times extremely difficult to find out who the responsible person is. And if we want to see the records of what was applied recently or in the past, that's virtually impossible sometimes. So you're right, the system is broken. It does need to be fixed.
Yeah, because you show up to a golf course and there's a mosquito problem. You would think they would go to, at most golf courses, probably the general manager, who's probably the highest person at that golf course. But you're supposed to go to a QP, and you're going to, first of all, you might not even know who it is, and then you're like, how do you get hold of them? And then it's like, like that part of the box has got a round.
Especially if they're renting a QP,
Yeah.
it's difficult to get a hold of an individual sometimes, let alone the records that they're supposed to keep every month. Right?
Chair Task Force, Phyllis M. Faranga, it's our turn. This is in referring to an enforcement question, and I had several QPs who basically quit their corporations. They were QPs, they quit them because they felt they were being used as scapegoats, in that if anything happened, they would be the first to go and the corporate would continue to survive, too big to fail. They would go first, and they were asking their executives for more money for training. They couldn't get more money for training. They noticed their insurance policies were pretty low, or there was no bonding. They asked, basically he's a safety officer kind of person. And none of this happened, so they quit their corporations and went on because they felt they were being set up as a scapegoat if something happened. In my own situation, when I had a run-in with the state, at the time we had 10 employees, it was basically suggested I throw my key employee to the wolf and lob them off to keep the corporation going.
My name is Rick Ruffey Sr. I am the owner of University Terminal Pest Control. We operate statewide. I've been in the business for 42 years. I have owned my own company for 37 years. I have been all of the above. But more importantly, what I have been is I have been actively involved in conversations, discussions, work groups that have talked about this as well as all the other various subjects you're going to be discussing for a long, long time. Something I see happening here that's muddying the water just a little bit is we really work from a regulatory point of view on two different levels. First, we have licensure, and then we have rules and or regulations. And as we go through this conversation, I see that that line gets blurred, and I've been in the middle of that blurred line for a long time. With Dave, with Ken, with some other people in the industry in this state, over the period of the last 3 to 5 years, we've had any number of meetings where we have tried to define and identify the difference between what should be in law and what should be in rule. As we talk about licensure, limiting it just to that part of the discussion, what should be in law is definitions. What is it? What should be in rule is what are the responsibilities of whoever is going to live to that definition. It makes less difference whether you have a business license, a qualifying party license, and an applicator license, then the difference is in what do they do, what are they held responsible for, by whom, and to what level. And I think that the first step, unless I misunderstood this process, the first step of what's being looked at today is more from the licensure point of view. And so if we have a business license, what's a business license really responsible for? Well, they're responsible for having that license. They're responsible for running their business, which under state laws that exist now, and I think will continue to be, means holding a level of liability insurance that does protect the consumer in the event that there is they need to be made whole in one way or another. And there are 3 or 4 basic responsibilities that fall to that business licensee that don't fall to the qualifying party and don't fall to the structural applicator. When you move to the qualifying party, it's different. The business license doesn't have to have any expertise in dealing with the various pests. They don't have to be certified. They have to be responsible for the umbrella that goes over the business. When it comes to qualifying party, that's different. Training, equipping, those are very specific things, but those should be in rule. Those shouldn't be in law, because those are things that change. New products come on the market. 5 years ago, who thought about bed bugs? You know, things change. Things change in pest populations. Things change in solutions as it applies to materials that are available, how they're labeled. Things change in the equipment that's available to use. Who thought of thermal applications for much of anything before we had bed bugs back with us again? So trying to get too specific in the law is a mistake that we have suffered from as regulatory people, as industry members, and quite frankly the public when it came to a complaint or a grievance of some sort.
No, I was going to say, I think it's probably the reason we're doing this, and maybe I said us in the wrong direction. When one of our first meetings, we got our minutes up, I guess maybe it would be in there, I can't remember or not, but I said is as we move forward, I think we're going to have to do 2 tracks. One of them being the law and one of them being the rules. And the reason for that is because we have to be able to show folks that we aren't losing anything. Because when we go and we develop this general law, people are going to say, well, what about this? What about this? And so we need to have this parallel track which shows these details which you're talking about.
All the
it says that we have to do these things. So.
Yeah. Well, and if I missed the point, I apologize for that.
You weren't there, so I just wanted to make sure
okay.
that I want to make sure that it was clear for you that we understand that. And,
but one of the most helpful things you could do for the regulators, for the industry members, is to be able to clearly separate what are the responsibilities by defining the responsibilities of what are now the 3 different levels of licensure. That may change. We may have 4 levels, we may have 2 levels. Doesn't matter, you've still got to accomplish the same thing. And at that, I'll leave you to your case.
Thank you, Rick. Hey, I think I'm going to, I'm asking, Yolanda, are you doing okay? Again, we make sure we're saying our names clearly and slowly because I know it's hard. She doesn't know anybody. She's new. Vince, I'm wondering about taking a short break just because Yolanda was, you're sitting trying to keep up with all this stuff and everybody might want to take a potty break. And Vince, I wanted you to at least do a quick overview of this for everybody because this was a handout that we have sitting up here as well, kind of a review of that. So why don't we take, let's take a 6-minute break. So when my clock says 11:40, we're going to start again. What's that?
It's too hard getting to these guys. Being way too
Join
Well, I'll tell you, when prior to us releasing the WPIR, I can only work with them. I had Frederick, Scott Richardson, and then we'll go back to the commissioners and say, here's our new one. What do you guys think? If they approved it, we'll good go. That's why they approved it, because of the individuals that we assigned to the work. They were well-known individuals within the industry. So then the commissioners had trust in those individuals, so there's no discussion. You know, I think that's one thing that we know.
Making sure the lights on the place. There's a lot of that. Still. Those are some kind of special work and then they don't sell the whole story. But they give you the ground things.
It'll be interesting to see. So should we put this on the agenda and nothing else?
For several years. I've had the opportunity to get say things or things that need to be said, things like unsaid, and they're all being and that really does hard more than what's happening here. We have it. So you look the number
Just tell me. Just give me the answer. I want to know all of it.
Not all aware of
So I spent a lot of time overseas. You're the QC. Just the guy with a whole lot of issues. There's no what never got accomplished.
All right. Is Vince? Oh, there he is. Vince, do you want to cover this sheet just so the task force members understand what this is? Please.
Vince Craig, OPM. Essentially, this chart, all you folks should have a copy of it. I put it at the back table. The title is Qualifying Party Licenses in Other States. Essentially, the reason why I drafted this document was because of a question asked at our last meeting whether or not Arizona should have a qualifying party. I was asked to contact other states. The last time I contacted the states, they were primarily those on the eastern coast. They don't seem to do things the way that we do things here in the west. So I tried to include some states over here in our neighborhood. And the first one, of course, which was very interesting, is California, the state that, from a lot of the negative comments the last time, no one wants to be like them. But it's interesting to note that they have a title similar to a qualifying party. They have a qualifying manager. And I want to also thank Kevin Etheridge, because since he does live in California, he helped me out as well.
Excuse me. I live in Arizona. I'm a registered tax holder and everything.
Thank you. I'm glad you clarified that. He's not a resident of California. But essentially, they require 4 years of experience with regards to termite work if you're going to be something akin to a qualifying party, whereas the other categories, of course, were 2 years. Colorado also required a qualifying supervisor, which was akin to a QP. And if you note, under experience required, they don't really require as much experience in certain categories. Some of those categories were simply 8 months. But the information that did not come out because it should have been on the back was New Mexico. I spoke to Bonnie Raby there, who is, I believe, the assistant director of agriculture now. They also have a title similar to a qualifying party. And they also require 2 years of experience. So I asked her, how do you come up with the 2 years? Is it 3,000 hours such as in Arizona? And she stated it's impossible to calculate the hours. She said that they needed something as a guideline, so they stuck with 2 years. So basically, if during those 2 year periods, during the 2 year period, you perform pest management services, whether you perform 6 applications a month, 6 every 6 months, that's 1 year, and then the next year you've also done something. And so essentially, they're fixated on the years and not necessarily the hours. So I thought that was interesting. But it appears that all the states over here on the west do have something akin to a qualifying party. Whereas if you note on the other pages, the other states do not. They essentially just ask that you are a licensed applicator. If you can pass the exam, get a license, you go out, you spray. And that may have a lot to do with the fact that here on the western coast, we're more concerned about termites. Whereas over there, they're not. So they're perhaps no doubt more focused on agricultural issues, whereas here we're more focused on structural issues.
Thank you, Vince. And I want to make sure you had that in your hand just so it wouldn't go out of here. I guess what I'm going to do at this point in time is I'm going to stop the conversation on QPs. I mean, it was a kind of a break. And I think what we're going to do is staff and myself we're going to sit down and we're going to start writing down things, you know, these things that you guys have talked about in different, you know, because we have wide views on this subject. And so what I think we're going to do is we're going to start putting things on a piece of paper, and we can start trying to narrow our focus onto some things as we develop this. And I don't know if it'll be like an issue paper, or we'll have maybe discussion and some categories underneath that or something like that. I'm not quite sure how they'll come together, but then we'll come back to you again and then have you guys, you know, then we can hopefully start to focus in on what we want to do with that. Is that acceptable to everyone?
Yes. Just send that out before the next meeting.
And that was going to be my next thing. We will do our darndest is we've got to get it out in advance. I understand that. That's so you guys have the opportunity to read it, and we'll get it out to everybody. So everybody has 10 minutes before the meeting. Well, you got this one came on like 2 days before. That was really good. So I didn't see anybody shaking their head no on the task force. So that's the route we'll take with that. The next one we have is we have background investigations, and let's see. Casey, I know you looked a little bit into this. Do you want to say a little bit about this before we start hammering on each other? Or?
Mr. Chairman, members of the task force, Casey Collins, from the Attorney General's office. Last meeting, I think Vince prepared for you analysis of other states and how whether or not they do background investigations regarding pest control. What I've done some research on, some initial research on, is in Arizona statute under Title 32, it regulates several different licensing boards, including pest management. And so I took a look at all those licenses to see which of those boards actually require a background investigation or fingerprints. And there's probably about 40 licenses, if not more, covered in Title 32. Almost all of them have requirements about being of good moral character or making sure that you don't have felony conviction or even a misdemeanor conviction, depending on the exact license. It varies a little bit, but generally speaking, good moral character, when it only says that, then it's further defined in rule, and usually that means that you haven't been convicted of a crime over some past time period. So most of the entities have requirements like that. A little bit more than half of the entities have specific authority to require their applicants to submit fingerprints, so in order to do the background checks. So for the other entities, I don't know whether or not they do background checks or not, but more than half of those do actually have fingerprint authority. And I did not check to see whether they require fingerprints or it's discretionary. I believe that most of them are probably required to submit a fingerprint card. Now, whether or not the agency does anything with that is something else, but just to give you a feel for the licenses that are covered, home inspector, remediation specialist, chiropractor, contractor, embalmer, cremation person, naturopathic medicine, nursing, optometry, real estate, private investigators, behavioral health, occupational therapy, board of appraisal, massage therapists, athletic trainers, certified reporters. Those are all where fingerprints, they have an authority for the fingerprints. Some of the licenses where you have to have good moral character or you have to make sure that you haven't had a crime in your past, but there was no specific authority about fingerprints. Architects and engineers, accountants, podiatry, optician, pharmacy, physical therapy, veterinarians, polygraph test administrators, and a few of the jobs where you didn't require anything, didn't look at your background at all.
these licenses also require documentation for permission to work in the country as well, prior to even applying for the license? Or is that part of the license application?
In Arizona, there's a completely separate law that if you have a professional or occupational license, you have to show proof of legal residency. Or I shouldn't say lawful presence is actually the technical word to get that. So that's a completely separate law that applies most likely to all of these licenses that I just mentioned.
Go ahead, Casey, I just wanted to see if I'm a little foggy on this. You said authority versus, I'm asking authority versus requirement. So the agency may have the authority, but are they required to do the background check?
Yeah, I actually just, in preparation for this meeting, started doing the research, and so I did not have time I didn't take the time, I should say, to determine that issue. I realized that coming to the meeting that would be useful, but I haven't done it. At this point, I just gotten who actually has the authority to, so I couldn't name which ones specifically require fingerprints. Although my belief is that, generally speaking, when they have the authority for fingerprints, it's usually a requirement that the applicant submit the thing. I think, and I'll check on that.
Then to follow up on the proof of citizenship, it's lawful presence. What are the documents that are legal to use for that? Is it Arizona driver's license a legal document for that?
Yes, in fact, there's a statute entitled 41-1080 that lists all the acceptable forms of identification. Arizona driver's license, as long as it was issued after 1996, I believe, qualifies. But that's, again, that statute has a list. There's about 10 to 12 different things that will work.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from Casey? All right. Again, I guess I stated previously that, kind of was, that brought this in is because it is a time-consuming and effort to go through this, should it be government's role to require a background check, and so I don't even have to get going, so go ahead.
You know what, right up front, unless it's required by law, I would say no, it's not government's responsibility to be in that business.
Okay, and I guess that, the concern, that what people have always thrown back to me is the state's going to accept a certain level of liability with that, and that may be true, but I also believe that the business themselves is going to be the one who's going to accept the greatest liability by not doing so. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I believe that if you hire someone of not moral character, good moral character, I think you do have potential liability as a business.
Okay, all right, Ken?
Ken Frederick. Yeah, my only question, I used to do background checks on all my technicians when I hired them anyway, and my office staff. But when OPM started doing it, I didn't have them to pay for it. That was okay. I can see why you would not want to do background checks on the technicians. As a business owner, I would do it anyway, even if it's not required. But I don't know about a business licensee or a qualified party to keep that. I think there should be a level where it's required.
So what you're saying is you think that perhaps the business licensee or the qualifying party should have a background check, but the applicator themselves,
leave that to the business owner.
Okay, all right, appreciate that.
Just a clarification, Will Russo, I'm sorry. How's it currently done? Do you do a background check on everybody that gets a license, QP, or just a license applicator, and what's the thing?
Chairman, Mr. Russo, actually, yes, we do background investigation on all qualifying party license applicants. and all applicator license applicants. They all get background verification. What I wanted to add is last month's task force meeting, someone asked me how many we had actually denied based on that. Fiscal year 2011, we actually denied 11 licenses. Out of how many, we had, and let me clarify, these were ones that denied. We actually have some that had either failed to disclose or disclosed. We discovered something and they just didn't continue with the process. But they weren't effectively denied. They let their license, they let their application terminate, exactly. Last year we had, I want to say roughly, probably 700 to 800 new license applicants last year. Of those 11 that were denied, 9 of them were denied because they failed to disclose they had a conviction on their application. The application says, have you ever had a felony or misdemeanor involving moral character? They said no. Background investigation shows that you did. The 3 or the other 2 that were not, that did disclose during the interview process, it was discovered that they were being very untruthful. When a person says, well, I actually didn't remember that and I didn't know that happened, but they can tell you what they were wearing, then they committed the act. It appears untruthful. Or we've had folks that said, I completely forgot about that. Me personally, I can remember almost every cowboy ticket I've got, and you tell me you can't remember a 5-year stint in prison, well then, I don't necessarily think you're being good to this. These are the things that we actually discovered during the interviews we do with folks who have either failed to disclose or did disclose and we start doing it. We do further look into their information.
Thank you. And I wanted to make sure that he told you about I think Kurt was, I thought you had asked about how many we had denied. And I wanted to make sure that you realized the ones that were denied. It wasn't because we went through this whole process and we decided that, oh, this isn't a good guy. It was because these guys failed to disclose first off that they had a felony, or they came into the interview process and they definitely showed themselves not to be a good moral character because they were not untruthful in that whole process. So it wasn't through the process. And again, the reason I was doing this, and my point was, this whole background investigation thing that we're doing is very time consuming, everything like that, and it's not doing us a whole lot of good versus you, if you want to do that as a business, I think that's your decision. So.
Point of clarification as well too, 10 of the 11 that were denied actually were working for licensed businesses.
They were?
Yes.
Just for clarification, can you explain this what the Department of Ag does? Any background checks?
We have no background checks.
So at the beginning of this whole process, you stipulated that it's not our purpose to change the way the Department of Ag does their business. So are we looking to emulate what you do, one and two together?
No, I think...
Or are we going to create this whole separate background check just for structure?
This is not going to impact agriculture. I think this was to look at to see how the regulation of structural pest control could be fit into the Department of Agriculture. So it's not going to affect the agriculture. But again, I'm just looking at that for, do we need to do it? So, go ahead.
The only reason I can see that it should continue would be in a very limited or focused way from the concept that these people are entering other people's homes. That's the only plausible argument. I'm not saying I agree with it, but that's the only plausible argument I could think of. Definitely determining whether they're in this country lawfully or not is none of the business of the Department of Ag. I'm assuming if they work for a business, they've completed an I-9, and that process should be over with. But I'm not hearing my comment really is that I'm not hearing the industry say that they have any value in it. Unless we do, then I'd say we do away with it. Pronto.
Andy, so I don't know if it's the rule of government to do it, because I do it anyway, but I can't do the same level of background checks.
I'm sorry, who are you with?
Sorry, Andy Witcher, Scorpion Tech, Termite.
Thank you.
I see value in that. I cannot do the level or the depth of background check that you guys, the government can do, but again, I don't know how. Ultimately, it only takes one, but I don't know how much benefit there is to make that burden on the agency. So some benefit, but On the other side, I don't like to have to wait the time to get a new guy licensed, so that's a little bit of a burden for me as a small operator.
And I guess that, I've heard something about that before, Robert. Is it like there's some, you can go like 7 years or something, there's some company or whatever that can do like a 7-year review, and if it's outside of that, am I just confused?
If that's the case, and Chairman knows the committee, if that's the case, I don't actually know about any agency that does that. Typically, what I understand is typically private industry or private businesses, it's typically, let's say, a 7-year background investigation, and it's really limited. Whereas the state's background investigation goes to the Arizona Department of Public Safety and the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation. So if it's happened, and it's happened in the U.S., we find out about it.
How much does it cost to do a background check?
Right now, for the agency to do the background investigation, or to get an agency based on or get a background investigation based on agency requirements, it's $24 for the background investigation. Fingerprinting varies depending on where you go. The agency currently charges $10 to do so. From my understanding, to get a fingerprint clearance card on your own, it's like $125.
You charge the applicant the fees for that?
Yes.
Is that what we charge, or is that what it costs?
It's actually the Department of Public Safety will run the background investigation for the $24. So and the fees actually go to the Department of Public Safety. We're not, the person will make out a cash register and money order, which is what the DPS requires. They make it out to DPS. We just send the information to DPS. So the time frame actually is DPS's time frame, not the agency's time frame as well.
Kurt, you have one question while Robert's still there?
Yes, I understand where we're going with this discussion, but I know in the past, when there was a person with a felony conviction, they used to have to come before the commission to go through that whole process. Are we looking, has that gone bye-bye? We're not going to resurrect that again? Is that something up for discussion for us to do?
At the last meeting, I spoke about this, saying that we have stopped bringing them before a committee because it was even more time consuming. And what I stated is if somebody is 3 years clear of having any run-ins with the law, that we're approving them because we have to give them the right to a hearing. And if somebody comes into us and they've been, we took 3 years. And we said if somebody's been clear of the law for 3 years, how are we denying them a license? I mean, if we're going to go into a hearing and win that, how are we going to win that? And so that's what we have done. And Robert just recently has one that we're actually going to talk to.
Yeah, we received an application just this month from an applicant who failed to disclose that they had a conviction. We did a background investigation and found out there were three felony convictions. One was later designated a misdemeanor, and the last felony conviction resulted in a 4-year standard.
So to finish the answer to the question is, if we do away with this, yes, that will go away. So then it will be a business's choice whether they want to do that. And again, I ask people to listen to the radio because you will hear some plumbing firms, I believe it is on the radio, that say, we do a background investigation on all our employees. They use that as an advertisement. You know, so that's something else that, ooh, money. So, okay. Go ahead, Will.
I mean, unless you think it's premature, I'd like to make a motion that we do away with background investigations going forward.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
That was
Phil Hemming.
Will and Phil Hemming. Okay.
You both have the same last name.
No, yeah, no. My brother. Will Russo, Phil Hemming. We have a motion and a second. We have further discussion. Dave?
I would just ask that maybe we stipulate in that, provided it's legal, because if something in law says that you have to.
It's not going to affect us now. This is one of those things that the task force is recommending moving forward. So this is going to have to go through a change.
So as of today, even if we make
the change now, it's still going to continue until we get the law changed.
And in writing the new law,
yes,
be it in rules or in the law, then whatever, if what we recommend is adopted, that'll be law.
Yes. And thank you for asking that, because we don't want people sitting here all of a sudden going, oh good, we're out of this, we don't have to do this anymore. It's not changed. Again, this task force is affecting where the laws and the rules will be going in the future. This does not affect the current procedures. Kevin Etheridge is chair of the PMAC, correct?
Yes.
You know, if they were to come forward with something, a recommendation like that, then we have to look at this to see what options we have available. But this task force is moving forward in the laws and the rules. So I'm glad you asked.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
But, and I guess I need to ask Casey this, if it's not our law, if it's not in our law, structural or in ag, we don't really have the ability to address that. If it's in a broader law that says all licensed people under these categories have to have a background check.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, task force members, Casey Cummings, under that scenario, that would be correct. But this law that you're discussing, the background checks, actually are in OPM statutes right now. It has, the acting director has authority to do that. So as I understand the motion, the proposal would be is that in the future, when the legislation is rewritten, it would no longer contain authority to do background checks.
You understand it correctly.
I think what Dave is asking for, if we pass this resolution today, is it constitutionally valid in the broad spectrum of that?
Well, again, this is a proposal to, what ultimately the task force is doing is going to make a recommendation to the legislature on how to change the statutes. So that's what it would be, and then if the legislature adopted all of the proposals, all the recommendations of this task force, then at that point, then OPM would, under the Department of Agriculture, would no longer conduct background investigations. I would add to, for discussion for the task force, I'm not clear whether it's part of this motion or needs to be discussed separately. There's two issues. One is, does the Office of Pest Management conduct background investigation? And two, do you even ask people if they've committed a felony? Because some agencies do that. They'll ask people on their application, have you committed a felony? And if they find out that you have, then they'll deny your license or revoke it, but they don't necessarily actually do a background check to verify that you're being honest. So that's an aspect that should be clarified.
The clarification, the intent of my motion is that we get out of that business altogether.
The way I understood it.
That's why I second.
Okay, so that's, he seconded, so that was the understanding of moving in the second. And I think what you're saying is there's that section 32 which covers all this stuff, and you're wondering if there would be a conflict with that. And I think with this, we'll have to address that if need be moving forward, you know, if there's a conflict there. And I think, because the licensure for OPM is under that.
There's no broad statute that applies to all agencies about background
Okay.
checks. That would
Cool.
have to be changed.
Thank you. Further discussion?
I just want to say, I still think the business licensee or somebody who's responsible should be background checked.
And just a comment to that, I agree. If I owned your business, I would background check anybody I was going to send into somebody's home. But it's your business. So.
Vince, you wanted to say something?
Hopefully I can speak as an individual. Because I basically like the fact
We'll
that...
see what... We'll be the judge of that.
Don't change your name,
Yeah, Vince Craig, Robert Tolton. But just, I'm wondering, and I don't know if Casey would have to answer this, if this committee would not have to vote on a specific date, because if you read the actual law, we don't have to do background checks. It's an option. So the fact that there was just a vote to eliminate it, would we even have to wait to get approval from the legislature?
Well, I think that's a separate issue.
That's up to Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Aye. Okay, so we had, that's 7-1. I guess, as a chair?
I don't know if the chair votes or not.
6-1. No, I'm voting on aye for the Can't burn it, that's what, so,
Can't vote, okay.
I mean, I didn't know how that all worked, if I always was the voter, if I had to break the ties, you know.
You just gave yourself the right to vote.
Right, yeah, okay. Next one we have on the agenda, thank you guys, and I'll have these all listed in the next agenda. We have tarps, and let's look at the time. It's 12:10. So, I'm not sure if this will be a quick one or not. And
Never has been.
I know, and that's, I guess I look to you guys. You know, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We've been here over 2 hours now.
Why don't you put a time limit on the discussion with the caveat that it will be continued?
Okay. So, okay, how about that? We'll have a discussion, and at 12:30, we'll end it at 12:30, and we can continue to discuss it at the next meeting. But this way, we'll get the subject started, and at 12:30, we'll call her good, and then move on to. Actually, I guess the next thing we have is just setting up the next meeting. So we got so.
Maybe also give Andy, what your sport we think. Maybe also be like maybe 2 minutes per audience.
Oh yes, yeah, that's part of the agenda. So
Someone running the.
Yeah, that's part of the agenda. We'll get there. Must have something burning.
No, I know. I just.
All right. As you know, the TARF, that's the Termite Action Report form that the industry has to submit to the Office of Pest Management for the initial treatment, for a wood inspection report, and for a first time that they're going back to treat a facility after, like, it's not under warranty anymore. That's correct? I mean, is that covered adequately?
And also WDIIR.
That's what he said. He said that.
Yeah, in wood inspection, wood destroying insect. So that's one thing, and currently it's $8. Okay, and the database, as I understand it, was set up, and I'm not a historian, but as I understand it, was set up so people would have an idea. They could go and they could find out when a property had been treated and things like that. But unfortunately, as you heard, what it shows, it doesn't show if I went out and I treated a home and I had to come back and retreat it 5 times, that would not be in the system. So it doesn't show that. Are there any realtors in the room? I know the real estate industry uses it quite a bit, and I'm not sure what purpose they use it for. I don't know if you care to tell us what the purpose is. Or?
He may be better because I just deal with businesses. I don't deal with homes.
Okay.
You want to come up or?
Would you please?
Sure.
Henry Schneider, International Accommodations, Chairman and Board. I've had the opportunity to use the database many times. I found it to be woefully inadequate and in a real estate transaction being completely worthless. The information it contains does not contain the information that I need for a real estate transaction. Specifically, when I go to purchase or sell, and I'll cover this from the purchaser's point of view because the purchaser is the one that has the financial interest, and also the lending institution also has a financial interest in knowing what the current state of the building is. Not only from the state of termites, but from the state of plumbing, electrical, foundations, structural integrity, chemical dumps, the whole rest of it. So from that standpoint, there is no information in the database that can be relied upon.
So you don't use it? I mean, I guess I wanted you to tell me how you use it.
Well, I tried to use it, and I have been unable to. You have to have a current inspection.
But that's part of a real estate action anyway. You have to have WDIIR anyway, correct?
Well, you certainly want to. It's not a requirement.
Most lending institutions require it?
Most lending institutions will want you to have one, yes.
Okay.
And so it's a lending institution requirement, certainly not a state of Arizona requirement. But as someone who's purchasing a building, it's good due diligence to have a private inspection.
Ma'am, I don't know your name. I would be interested in hearing how you use it in a business format as well, if you would.
Unless there's real estate involved, we don't use it at all.
Okay.
And most businesses do not pertain to the owner owning the real estate or selling it.
Could I get your name too, please?
TJ Hammer.
TJ Hammer. Okay, thank you. All right, so, I'm not hearing, Dave, did you raise your hand up for a minute? No, I haven't heard, not yet, okay? So go ahead, Will.
Will Rousseau, this is a feature program that has, at least from the feedback I've received, is kind of a lightning rod for controversy. So I guess I'd be curious to hear from the industry, from the pest control industry, is this creating value? I've heard Henry say that it doesn't. I never looked at the database. Is there anybody who would speak in favor of keeping this, and in what form? With 2 minutes left, please.
Well, and I just wanted to clarify. I'm going to let Ken go, but I wanted to say the one thing. I looked at it the first time I'd ever looked at it, and I thought it was worthless. But then I realized that it's actually quite useful. The less information in there, the broader the search. And so I was looking for something specific, and I kept putting it in. It didn't come up. But if I put in like 1036, then I got a whole listing of things. It came up with a whole lot of stuff. So it was very useful to me. From that, just in learning to use it, I thought it was terrible, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. So
Ken Frederick, this is a real pet peeve for me, because I don't like the TARP. I don't like that I got to pay $500 a year in fees because of the TARP.
Ken, sorry, Will Russo, you pay $8 per but it adds up in your business to the final.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then beside the point, I was so against it, I was blinded. Just get rid of it, serves no purpose, whatever. But a question was raised in our last meeting about it, and it made me think. I still don't think that TARP should exist, okay? It's an incomplete information. It doesn't really do anything, maybe a little bit for the public. That's my opinion. However, if somebody's purchasing a home, and they're chemical sensitive, and they want to know what's been applied around that home, where do they go for knowledge? I mean, they can hire somebody to come in and test it, I'm sure. But where do they go? If they go to the TARP and they find out, yeah, it was treated by my company 3 years ago, but maybe it was treated by Terminix last year. But how many times was it? It's just incomplete information. So we either got to change it to where every application is put in there, which nobody wants to do, or we just get rid of it, and maybe there's a different mechanism. Right now, if you do a pre-treatment on a new home, when you're done with the final grade, you're required to put a sticker in the electrical box that tells you who the company was, when it was treated, and what was used. Maybe something like that when we treat a house for termites, we can do the same. I don't know. Just to give somebody information so they can call me and get the history on that. Just a thought.
Dave? I want to go on record to say, I do not support the TARP system the way it currently exists. Okay, now, here's my thought on it. I don't believe that what we do currently and the usefulness of it really has much purpose. That doesn't say, from the consumer protection side of me, that there isn't a need to identify who treated a property, an address, for a consumer to be able to do some kind of background check if they need to. We do have, if we're looking at protecting the consumer, we do have allergies, some extremely severe. We have some personal preferences. Some people just are deathly afraid of a chloridated or chloridated hydrocarbon, or a chlorpyrifos or a diazon or diazepam product. There are personal preferences, there are potential allergic reactions that I believe the consumers have a right to be able to get that information. So some form or fashion that might identify a property to a company in a treatment form like Ken may have said, may have some validity. Is it an $8 validity? No, not in my book. And I don't believe our industry, the regulatory body, should be balancing their budget on the back of predominantly termite companies.
Can I ask a question of Ken, just so I make sure I understood what you said correctly? What you're saying is right now when you go and you do the pre-treat, or the final grade, you put the sticker in the box?
Yeah.
What you were saying is perhaps you could do it every time you go out there and do a
No,
treatment for like termites?
Not every time. But if I treat that entire structure and I put it under warranty,
Yeah.
and it just gives the consumer something, because there's no guarantee I'm still in business.
Yeah.
But that gives them some information, so if they choose, they can go look
They
at
can
another house.
contact you, well, and then they can also contact you. I guess what I was trying to get at is, you know, what you said, that database wasn't of value because it doesn't show all the treatments, but if your thing was in there, calling card was in there, then they could contact you and say, I want to know how many times this house has been treated.
We're required to keep the records for 5 years.
Okay, all right. Kirk?
Maybe Vince or Robert could answer this. It was my understanding, though, that one advantage to the TARP system was that you had clarification that an actual termite job was completed. We've had issues where companies did not go back and do the final grade, but at least you knew that the pre-treat was done. And so you were supposed to follow up on that after a year to make sure that the final grade was actually completed. Or is there a mechanism in place that the complete termite job is actually being accomplished by a company right now?
Yes, Vince Craig. From a compliance standpoint, the database is great for us. Oftentimes we'll get calls from a consumer that states, my home has termites, the company's been out 3 or 4 times, they're not solving the problem. We type in their address, we find out, okay, they didn't turn in a pre-treat target, or they didn't do the final grade. We'll contact the company. Now that we're at the Department of Agriculture, it's compliance assistance. We'll say, hey, you didn't do the final grade, get it done by such and such a time. Whereas before, it would have been a complaint. But we're changing our attitude.
Sergeant, just to keep on that thought. So if we were to eliminate this TARP, how would you know what termite treatments were done? So there would be no mechanism in place for you to ensure that the final grade was being completed.
If the homeowner did not know who the pre-treater was, so they couldn't give us that information, we wouldn't know who pre-treated the home. Therefore, we could not contact the company to tell them.
So that would be one advantage of the TARP.
Exactly. Exactly. Another advantage I just want to mention real quick. I'm sorry, Kevin, but we have 3 cases right now. One case, a homeowner called us because she paid a company to do a termite job. The house was 3 years old. The company refused to go back out to address the problem. She called us, we typed in her address, turns out her house was pre-treated. She didn't know about our TARP database. We said, oh, you need to call such and such company. The company, of course, now didn't want to honor the pre-treat warranty because she hired another company. But after the 2 companies talked, she received resolution. We have a huge case out in Yuma right now where a representative from Caldwell Banker actually took the WDIRs that the company did, and the company was truthful. They marked conditions conducive to termite infestations, but this individual changed the forms when she sold the homes. We would have never known about it had the consumer not called us and we typed in the address, because what we received from the homeowner was different from what was in our database. We went out to Yuma, we talked to the companies, we saw their forms. We noticed that their form differed from our TARP database. It led us back to Caldwell Banker, and now she's under federal investigation. So from a compliance standpoint, the TARP database helps us big time.
Okay. Kevin, go ahead.
Kevin Etheridge, Contractors, Termite Pest Control, Mr. Chairman, members of the task force. I probably file $400 to $600 a week in TARP. So I would concur with Mr. Burns. I definitely would like to see it modified or eradicated. But to speak to the consumer side, because I have to stay aligned with what I talked about earlier in consumer protection, perhaps a modification of TARP. And perhaps it goes like this. You file an address that there has been a termite action done, along with your company name, registration number. That goes into the database. The OPM gets a request from a consumer or realtor. I'm looking at a property at 123 First Street in Phoenix. Can you tell me anything about it? Yes. Contractor's termite control filed a notice of work or a termite action on that property. Here's their phone number. You can contact them for the treatment record. This would speak to you're only getting one tarp, and if there's any warranty work that's been done on the property, then the company would obviously would be in their best interest when they're called to produce records to disclose for that.
Okay.
And I'd like to see you lower the fee.
In dealing with tarps, there really are basically three issues, three different actions that require a tarp. One is a wood infestation report, which virtually without exception has to do with transfer of ownership of an existing property. The other is when a pre-treat is done, and the builder is easily identifiable in that case. People may not move in pre-treat, but a person with a new home knows who built it. The third issue is when an existing property is treated either preventively or as a corrective measure for termites, to protect that home against termites, or to put it under a warranty for termites. They're all different, and we threw everything in together here. They're all different. In the case of the termite action report form, there actually is a provision in real estate law in Arizona right now that requires disclosure of termite actions to the best of the knowledge of the person selling the home. And I can't quote chapter and verse on this, but in essence, as I understand it, and once again, we've done thousands of these over the years, and that's a fairly new statute. It's only 10, 12 years old, something like that.
Spuds report.
Yep. To the best of my knowledge, a listing agent is to inquire of the person who owns the home now if they are aware of there having been any issues with termite activity or termite treatment during the time they were in the home. If that has and they say no, well, there's nothing the termite company or this commission is going to do about that. If they fail to disclose, failure to disclose, whether it's on an application for employment or whether it's on the sale of a home, is fraudulent. It's exactly the same thing. In the case of the treatment of a home for termites, an existing property, something such as Kevin suggests would work very, very well for that. I'm not in favor of that necessarily, but that's certainly a much simplified system that would create a database that if I went to purchase a home, an existing home, that I could go through my realtor or I could go through some route to the title agency to find out, or by calling the regulatory people directly, if something at that address had a termite action form filed on it going back whatever is appropriate, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it might be.
So you're in favor of keeping the current system?
No.
Okay.
I'm totally against the current
Kevin's,
system.
what system are you, what are you saying, just eliminate it altogether then, or?
If I had my druthers, number one, we talked about the return on investment for doing background checks. The return on investment for doing tarps is less. And quite frankly, it doesn't cost me a dime, it costs me a stamp, because I pass it on. I pass it on.
Okay.
So there are three different issues, but in any one of those cases, there are better ways to find out at no cost.
Okay. That's going to be the last one on this issue, so let's keep it short, okay? Sure.
Charles Olcott, Charles Olcott, O-L-C-O-T-T.
Okay, thank you.
Are you Ken, I believe?
Yes.
Yes. It has a record of how much poison is put around a particular property. That, I think, is important, especially with the amounts that are used in a termite treatment. The other consideration is their termites is not the only thing that really has that level of regulation. And again, it seems to be because of the financial stake in the property and in the actual treatment. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right, we are at the bewitching hour. So go ahead.
If I could just make a comment as a self-admitted, uninformed observer of this discussion. I'm not hearing a lot of support for TARP, but I'm hearing that there's maybe some consumer protection aspects of it. So I think the debate could be had how much should this department be involved in that downstream or in the new regulations. But if we're going to have any kind of report filed, there has to be a fee. I mean, the department can't do it for free. And so I think that's the thought I'd like to leave with the industry is, either you really can't go halfway there, in my opinion. You either have the program and you have a fee, or you do away with the program.
Jack, one quick thought, adding to Will and then Evans. Politically, this won't fly if you eliminate it. This will end up at someone's desk someplace and say you can't do that.
Gotta be careful with the consumer protection part.
Yep. So with that, I think we'll need to, we'll continue this discussion next time, and I'm thinking maybe we can make some notes on some of this stuff as well. I guess again, as we sit here, the financial impact is significant. I mean, for the Office of Pest Management, I don't want folks to forget that as well. That's 3-year average for the last 2 years is about $1.35 million, which helps to run the Office of Pest Management. So it's a big dollar figure. With that,
sorry.
Go ahead.
If you did away with TARP, would your expenses drop by that amount?
No.
Exactly.
No.
So.
But there are other ways.
Right.
Sure. We'll talk about that. So we're going to start with TARPs again at the next meeting. Okay. And moving down to the agenda, we have.
If, to Will's point about revenue, if Ken's alluded to, there's other ways to make up for that. Let's discuss what those would be, those options.
Okay. Yolanda's running into her lunch hour. And we make her go to lunch because you pay overtime and all that kind of stuff. So she might have to leave early today. How about that? I guess we do have the last thing on the agenda is there's 2 things that we have to deal with. Next one is call in public, and we're limited here to 2 minutes. And I'm going to ask you to speak on things that you would like the task force to address or get to your point. I don't want us to talk about, what's happened so much in the past or, bad things or we're evil people. I want you to talk about things that are important to this task force and that we should address it. Potentially should be on the agenda for a future meeting. Okay? So, go ahead. Introduce yourself again.
Seems to me OPM has a lot of data that can answer a lot of the questions. It would just be a matter of looking into it and auditing it and seeing exactly what compliance issues there are, why the violators violated. Was it educational outreach? Because the particular rule or law is too difficult for them to adhere to. And one thing, I was looking around, I was thinking there's some questions OPM needs to be asking. Okay, first, I got to say, I was really disappointed when I couldn't find the minutes on the website at all. For I think the first meeting was in August.
Correct.
Okay, I don't know if there's a time limit when they should be on up, but I think that should be.
I don't think we have to post it on we can.
Okay. Well, most minutes should be available in some fashion, I would think. No?
Give us contact, we'll be happy to send you a copy.
Great.
I haven't got an email from you yet, so
Okay.
when you do, I will.
I'll be glad to. I think there's a lot of questions this task force should be asking. Some of them are, why does OPM exist? Are we going to protect the environment? Do we protect our citizens? What is the main goal? What is OPM's mission statement? How does OPM know if it's doing a good job? Okay, I think that the complaints and have gone down. So is that a reflection of OPM doing a better job or doing a worse job? You guys, OPM has the data and that could be found out. What are OPM's goals and how are you meeting them? And how does it measure? And is there a threshold where OPM would not be needed anymore? If you go a year without having any complaints, does that represent a time when, well, maybe we don't need OPM?
All right, it's been 2 minutes. Okay, thank you. All right. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the task force, Jay Kinman on behalf of Arizona Pest Professionals Organization. Kinman, H-I-N, M-A-N. Mine's just announcement in nature. AZPPO is holding its first town hall forum December 14th at 5:30 at Univar offices at 2090 East University Drive. So we certainly welcome any members of the task force or the audience to join us. And any discussion that's brought up in the town hall, we're certainly welcome to share.
You said this is at the where?
Univar offices, U-N-I.
Yeah, where is that?
2090 East University Drive in Tempe.
Okay, so this is, and I appreciate you doing it. I can't talk about this. I just want, it's a great opportunity for public input.
Absolutely. We're going to be holding future, at 5:30. We're going to be holding future town halls around the valley, hopefully in Flagstaff, Yuma, Tucson as well.
All right,
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Pursue a different angle, different approach.
All right. Anyone else?
Andrew, what's your, speaking as president of AZPPO, just want to echo that, invite everyone here to come out. That's a time for industry input. Let's come together and let's talk about these issues where we have more time than to burden them with, some discussions. So come on out, tell your peers in industry to come on out to that town hall forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Hearing none. The last thing on the agenda is setting our next meeting and topics. And I had a thought last night, and I don't know if anybody's going to go for it. And part of it is I'd like to skip December.
You thought that?
I thought that. And the reason I thought that is just exactly because of what is going to occur here is I think if we start putting some of these thoughts down on paper and getting stuff, it's going to be a bit more work for us internally. December is a very busy month. And I'd like to have something useful for when we come back together to look at some of these topics. So feel free to tell me no.
If that's the criteria, then I agree.
Are you guys?
I'm in agreement with that. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, all right. So let's look at January again. So Lynn is over, so we can schedule whenever we want to.
Wow.
First 2 weeks in January are good for me.
And I want to just bring up the PMAC normally meets every other month. So January could be a good month for you as well. And is there a specific date that they normally, is it the second Wednesday?
Typically it's in that second Wednesday, the third Wednesday. Second and third Wednesday of the month.
But is that adjustable? I mean, I kind of like the fact that these are both being held on the same day, so folks can attend if they want to attend both. I mean, it just seems a little more practical.
We met October 19th, I believe.
What about Wednesday the 11th?
So far, so good. That's good, works for me.
Yeah. Dave?
I'm good.
So everybody's saying yes?
I think so.
All right. So do we want to set it for, is 10 o'clock in the morning better or 1:30 in the afternoon?
10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock? Okay. So we'll do that, and next meeting will be set Wednesday, January 11th.
Hopefully Jack at the Department of Ag, right?
10 a.m. Well, we'll go back and we'll try to get the meeting room. Unfortunately, we have one meeting room in our building, and someone else had booked the meeting room, and they had a large group as well, so it wasn't like we could move into one of our small conference rooms, so. Okay?
Real quick, did you say January 11th?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a AZPO board meeting on the second Wednesday, and so.
So would that be good then?
Well, that would be fine unless, you know, we're running late. Usually we're done by 10, but it may be a little difficult for members to get driving off.
Okay, I think 10 a.m. Wednesday, January 11th. And with that, I thank you all for your time and coming, and the PMAC meeting starts at 1:30 in the same location. Okay?